Welcome to another episode of Junior Achievement of South Florida's Recipe for Success. Just as there are no two recipes that contain the exact same ingredients or measurements, there are no two success stories exactly the same. Recipe for Success features entrepreneurs, visionary leaders, and innovators of all ages who will share the ingredients that make them successful. Here's your host, Lori Salarulo, President and CEO of Junior Achievement of South Florida.
Good morning and hi everyone. Welcome to this episode of JA's Recipe for Success. I'm your host, Lori Salarulo. It is such a pleasure to be with you today. One of the things I've mentioned that I love most about this is that I have the opportunity to learn from so many leaders across the industries here in Broward County. And especially through what we're going through, it's been such a pleasure and really inspiring to hear some of the ways that people are managing and leading through these times that we're going through. Today's guest is someone that I've gotten to know over the last, I would say, maybe a year and a half. And I was instantly impressed by her strength and her confidence and her ability, I think most of all, to partner and see that there's collaboration in everything that we do. And so I really admire that about her. Dr. Shernette Grant, who is the Innovative Programs Design and Support Director with Broward County Public Schools and published author, is joining us this morning. So welcome, Dr. Grant.
Hi, Lori. Good morning. How are you?
I am amazing. Thank you. Thank you for being with me.
Oh, thank you for having me. Such a pleasure.
I love it. Love it. So first question, how are you doing? Working remotely.
I'm working remotely. I got all dressed up for you today. You
I
are so special.
You look awesome, girl.
I think that's the beauty of working from home. You just sort of get up and you get right to the work, being very productive. Obviously, we're very cognizant of all that's going on around us. Yeah. But in the midst of all of that, we still just have to stay focused on the work and get what we have to get done. But this morning I got up and got all dolled up. I didn't just roll out of bed and grab a computer this morning. I went into, all of this just for you, Lori. That's
well, I am so grateful for that. And so I want our guests to get to know you because being in the school district, which is such a large organization, except for partners and students and people that you've come across, I want our community at large to get to know you because I think you're a pretty amazing woman and a pretty amazing leader. And so share a bit with us about how you ended up where you are. Was there an aha moment? Was there a pivotal moment that got you to where you are today?
Oh, boy, sure. Did you say the show was 20 minutes or 2 hours?
We can edit.
I'll give you the edited version. So I think you know by now, Laura, that I'm Jamaican. I came here about 25 years ago. I actually came here to go to college. I did high school and junior college in Jamaica and came to Miami, started at FIU. Interestingly enough, I started as a medical technologist. That's what I studied in Jamaica. That's what I came here, spent 4 years in college here studying medical technology, expecting to have a career in laboratories, right? To work in the labs. After completing my studies, I quickly learned, because I was misinformed, that I could not get certified because of some other nuances in the criteria. So I kind of bounced around for a little bit, doing odd things here and there, and it was actually my ex-husband who one day, I have to give him credit for that, who actually said, why don't you try teaching? Because he had a sister who was a teacher, brother who was a teacher. And I looked at him like he was crazy. I looked at him like he had 3 eyes. Fast forward, I said, you know what? I have a degree in science and biology. Why not? Applied for a job. Lori, if I fast forward to 2020, and this was in 2000, so this is 20 years ago, I would say that was my destiny. It was absolutely my destiny. And it is the place I needed to be. And my path to getting there was a little bit different. So for me, it was an accidental encounter that turned into basically a life mission right now. and a purpose, right? I remember even while I was working, I started working at Blanchely High School. That was my first teaching job, and that's where I was magnet coordinator. And I remember being in my office working on a project, and I was just sharing randomly with one of my assistant principals, Lori, and he looked at me, and I never forget it. And he says to me, "You are just going to make a fine assistant principal one day." And I thought, the little country girl from Jamaica, from the hills of St. Anne, what are you talking about? I'm just doing my job. And it was, that moment was pivotal for me. And 6 years later, after started teaching, after going through the magnet coordinator role, and I became an assistant principal, and then principal, and here I am today. And ironically, I think I should that I started in the magnet program at Blanchely High School, and now I'm sitting as the director of magnet programs in Broward County Schools.
Woo!
Lori, speechless, right?
Yep.
I can say to folks, you never know where you're going to end up, and I'm a true example of that. So that's
Yeah.
kind of my short version.
I love that story, and I think because we work together with our high school and middle school students, right, around career readiness and workforce readiness. And so, what I love about your story, especially for those students who are going to listen to this, is we don't always know where we're going to end up. Right. And so sometimes there isn't always a straight path to where we end up finding our passion, or as you put it, our destiny. Right. And so I know for me, it was the same thing. I was in corporate and ended up in nonprofit because I had my son, and that led me into the whole health and social services arena. And I just fell in love with helping people and advocating for people. And so you never know where you're going to end up. But the most important thing was getting your education, right, and developing those skills. And so important, having someone who encourages you and supports you, right? Yeah. So important when our students or young people hear that. And so I want to shift. So you mentioned coming from Jamaica. So I think, it would be remiss not to say, how was that? That's something we all have to go through, different changes and navigate things in our lives. Right. And so you had to navigate coming here as an immigrant from Jamaica. What was that like? And what did you learn from that experience?
So Laurie, that is kind of my journey. I came here looking for an opportunity, right? It was all about the opportunity, the American dream. And it's one of the reasons why I'm going to digress for a second, Laurie, that what's going on right now with us as a Black Jamaican woman and, what's going on in the world right now. I feel so honored because I stand on the backs of many Americans, very many Black Americans who have kind of paved the way for people like myself, for immigrants like myself, who can come to this country and find our opportunity, right? And we all have to kind of step back. I'm raising 2 African-American young ladies, and we have to kind of step back and think about just how blessed we are to have had these opportunities, to have people who have fought before us and try to find our place in the fight right now. Okay. Coming from Jamaica, it was not easy at all, Laurie. I ended up literally a year after I came here, I was almost homeless. And I say almost homeless because I ended up in a situation where I was living in somebody else's house, working for them in a domestic capacity, taking care of. I never forget her. She's an old Jewish lady. And I don't mean old. She was 92 years old, Laurie. Old Jewish lady.
Older
Jewish lady. She was amazing. Her son was a doctor in Miami. And I ended up taking care and caring for that woman for about 4 years while I went to school. It is only in America you can have some of those opportunities. So I do not take it for granted that we, coming from the islands, being able to leave where you are and come here and go to school and work while you're going to school and accomplish some of the things that I have accomplished. And you look at the kids I hope the students that are watching right now, will just understand that there is really nothing you cannot do if you put your mind to it. And that's my journey. And I try to bring that out in my leadership. As a former principal, that was my heart as a principal, as a school principal, as a school leader. I wanted my kids, I used to say to them, I used to work at William Dandy Middle School. That was my school. I used to tell my children, the world is bigger than 19th Street and Oakland Park and Sunrise Boulevard, because I wanted them to dream big. It can happen for me. There are lots and lots of barriers we have to face, but that's why also you mentioned, the role of leaders in getting this done. And that's my heart. Leadership is important. Leadership matters. And leaders have the ability to seep through all the cracks in the system that we see are getting exposed right now. And we have the ability to make a difference. And that's my heart. That is my heart.
And you can hear that. And, you mentioned something. And so far, I mean, just some great ingredients. But the one that stuck out to me, and you didn't actually say the word, but your story tells it, was courage, right? Mm-hmm. To have the courage to leave our home and the place that we know and the place that we're comfortable in, to go somewhere that is unknown to us, right? And we don't know what we're walking into, right? The unknown, I think, is very fearful and frightening for many people. But it gives me a perfect way to introduce the book, which is called Unorthodox Leadership, a guide for leading real people in real organizations. And so when you talked about your journey and the courage, I read the book last night because I knew I would be meeting with you today, and I didn't want you. I was afraid you might test me starting out as a teacher. I'm like, oh my God, I better know my. So, but the one area of the book that stood out to me was agility and the ability to be an agile leader. Mm-hmm. And that is your whole first part of the section of the book is really focuses on that. Talk a little bit about why that's so important as a leader.
It's important, Laurie. It is a personal characteristic that we all should aspire, first of all, to hone. Okay. The idea of agility comes from that flexibility in thinking, your flexibility in action, understanding that situations and circumstances will not, or more than likely will not go as you planned, such as leaving Jamaica, coming here, expecting to just go through, 4 years of a degree, get a degree, work as a lab technologist, and move on with my life. None of my life was like that. None of it. And I transfer those characteristics into my leadership. When you lead in different organizations, in different culture, different climate, different kids, every student is different. Every staff member is different. And it requires that we embrace that flexibility in our thinking so that we can maneuver the organization, maneuver the situations we have with our folks that we work with, Laurie, and understanding that each situation is different and each situation may require a different action. A lot of times as leaders, we get so stuck in who we are and what we are, and we talk a lot about, we're great at quoting the kind of leadership theories that we aspire to. We're servant leaders and we're transformational leaders. Well, I'm here to tell you that on some day, transformational leadership works. On some days, directive leadership works. On some days, you have to go to the servant leader mode. On some days, you just have to be able, Laurie, to navigate and maneuver based on the situation, understanding that at the heart of leadership is the person that you're working with. And because people are different, and you have to give honor to people's characteristics and their attributes, you really have to know who your people are, because if you don't, you're not going to get the most out of them. You're absolutely not going to get the most out of them. And if as leaders we think that a one-size-fits-all approach is going to work, we're going to get stuck. We're absolutely going to get stuck. So the idea of agility just kind of comes with or the idea that we need to be flexible, in how we think and how we act and how we engage folks, and be open to the personalities, be open to the relationships you've built over the years, be open to stepping out of the box. Yeah. We can't always recycle the same process. Sometimes we got to step out of the box. It's a little scary.
Well, and also times change. I mean, right, over my career, leadership has changed 360. When I started out, it was, this is the way we do it. This
Correct.
is, you report to us.
Mhm.
You are not in those meetings giving your opinion or your ideas or your feedback. You were told where the organization was going and how we were going to get there, right?
Agreed.
Now, today, it's about including those
Correct.
people. And in order to include them and to respect and honor them, as you said, which I love, right?
Mhm.
And to hear their opinions and their feedback and value them, we have to be open and we have to get to know who they are.
Absolutely, absolutely. And each of your staff members, Lori, has something special they can bring to the table. You know, great leadership is not about leading great people. You know, if we all let great people, I don't think any of us would have a job, right? So
They wouldn't need us.
they would need us, Lori. And I mentioned that in the book. You know, it's about finding out and figuring out ways that you can take those, I hate to use the words, imperfect people, because none of us are perfect, but use the nuances of the personalities and use the strengths and understand also the weaknesses, and knowing how to coach those weaknesses, knowing how to build your people and help them to recognize areas of growth for themselves, areas of growth that ultimately will contribute to growing the organization. So, so you're right. It's absolutely about just kind of that collaborative approach, knowing who you're working with, you know, taking the good with the bad and figuring out where we're going to meet in the middle. Because at the end of the day, if we keep our eyes on the ultimate goal, you know, which in education is the kid, it's the student, then you can't go wrong. You know, whatever your product is, it doesn't matter what your product is. If you keep your eyes on the product, then you can't go wrong with making decisions.
Yeah, and you talk a lot in the book. Several of the points are around the team, building the fan base, supporting the team, right? But the last point that you bring out in the book, number 8, is execute with confidence. And I have to tell you, my friends, because I do believe I can call you my friend today, because I think we have developed a relationship beyond the school, right? Our school and JA partnership. If you left there tomorrow, or I left there tomorrow, I know that you and I would continue to be friends. But what I think I fell in love with you about when I first met you and was so impressed with was your confidence. And so talk a little bit about that, because you went through so many things. Was that something that was just inbred in you? Was that something you developed? And how did you develop that confidence?
You know, Laurie, I think our experiences make and they break us. I am one of those folks who I constantly am positive about a lot of things. People, I hate to say, Laura, people describe me sometimes as having male tendencies. I'm not saying we don't have sensitive men in there. Please forgive me, you know, but they describe me as having because I don't take a lot of things personal. There are things that will bring me to my knees and make me cry and pray all night. But at the end of the day, I know how to understand that it's not really necessarily about me. People are going through things. People are, whatever darts are coming at you. So I think just the idea that I've learned over the years to be tough skinned, and because of the things that I had to take on, I could have packed up and gone back to Jamaica, Laurie. My entire family is in Jamaica. I hope they're watching right now. My entire family is in Jamaica. So I could have picked up after my first year when things weren't going as well as they needed to, and just gone back home and gone back to my perfect life in the little country hill where nobody knows where Mackenzie is, right? But I chose not to. I chose to press on. And you know what? It is so funny, Laura. Things happen to you in life and you wonder why. A friend of mine texted me this morning. I'm going to share it. And I think it's actually ideal. He said, good things come to those who believe. Better things come to those who are patient. And the best things come to those who don't give up.
Yeah.
Talk about hitting it home, right? And I had all kinds of big fancy words I could use to describe, you know, what makes me who I am. But I thought in its simplicity, that's exactly what it is. You learn not to give up. I am the first of 7 children. So when you're the first of 7 children, you cannot be sensitive.
Right. Well, you just can't, in any number order of the 7 children, you can't be sensitive.
You just learn not to be sensitive, Lori. And I think you learn how to also appreciate the glass being half full versus the glass being half empty. A lot of times we focus so much on the negatives and the what's not going so well. And we don't take time to think about all the things that are going well. I gave you the abbreviated version of my story. We would need 2 hours worth for me to go from start to finish. That's my next book. So it is my next book. But at the end of the day, you learn how to embrace just the spirit of gratitude, just the spirit of, gratefulness for what you have, where you are, what you've accomplished, the family, values and structures that you grew up in, or people who have been there to mentor you and people who see the good in you. It's so funny. This is actually, I really wanted to share that the idea that confidence sometimes is placed in you by somebody else, it's a real thought. It's a real concept. Going back to the assistant principal I spoke about, I never thought about myself as a leader. And Lori, throughout my journey, I've always had people who just sort of look at me and go, oh, wow, you really do this well. And if I didn't recognize it in myself, you start to embrace it. And it's why we have to now pay that forward. It's important that as leaders, we are paying that forward to people. We're growing the next generation of leaders and speaking positive into other people's lives so that they know too, in case they don't see it in themselves, right? That they too can accomplish some of these things that they struggle to recognize, within themselves. So I think my confidence is a combination of things. It's a combination of upbringing, my experiences, my mentorship, my mentoring, it's just a combination of things. And I think that's life in general, just a big old
so too.
all that we experience.
Yeah. And so it's interesting. And, as both of us, you have 2 girls, I have 1 girl, 1 boy, but I think with our girls, especially instilling that confidence in them, right, is so important, especially in those teenage years, because there's so much negative, especially now with social media, that can pull them and they're never enough. And so I think it's so important for us to make sure as women that not so much by talk, because as teenagers, they don't really want to hear us talk. So they just tune us out, actually. So, but I can tell you, because mine is 25 now, they are watching. And they were listening, even though they acted like they didn't want to hear what we had to say. But they are watching. There is hope
for me, Lori.
There is absolutely hope. I want to give you hope.
My daughter is watching on the inside of her. I don't want her to hear me talking about her.
Well, I'm sure she is amazing. But there was something else. So working in, I think I've had the opportunity to work in the corporate world, in big companies, small companies, and then, be involved in organizations before I ended up in the nonprofit world, worked in very small organizations. And now I guess JA would probably be a medium-sized nonprofit. And it's interesting because I find, and I will absolutely stand corrected, but a couple of things. One, being brave, being confident sometimes, and then you add on to that being a woman can sometimes not be a good thing in certain situations. Right. And I think that especially when you look at, although I like to think that things have changed over the years, but when you look at working in a large, for lack of a better word, I'm just going to call it what it is, bureaucratic type of organization, that cannot always be looked upon as something that's positive, right? Being brave can get you in trouble sometimes in organizations. Absolutely. I remember being in a very large organization and working under those circumstances. But I'd like to think that we have a leader of that organization today who embraces that. But what is that like? Has that ever been a time when you felt that you couldn't be brave and confident?
Actually, Laurie, I think we would all be remiss not to admit that at some point in our careers that has happened to us, right? And especially as we grow, and especially as we start to innovate or think about things that this is not going to go over well, right? But what I found in my career are a couple of things. One, I've always been surrounded by folks, and I think it's because of the types of relationships that I have built over the years, which is absolutely key to anything you do, especially as a leader. Those relationships that you build. You talk about that fan base in the book that we talked about. The fan base goes all the way to the top, okay? You need people who can, number one, reel you in, when you need to be reeled in. You need people who can help to talk you through some of the things that are Shernette. I get what you're trying to do here, but that's not the way to go about it, right? So let's take it back a little bit. And then you also need those people, Laurie, who are going to say, you know what? Go for it. It is the right thing to do. And when it is the right thing to do, sometimes you have to just do that and be brave, right? It may not necessarily go over well, but I think if you have all the other ingredients kind of sprinkled through, you have looked and thought about who you can align yourself with to get, a message across and to get a vision moving. There are so many strategic kind of things that you can actually do. And that's the heart of that book, actually. We talk about the theory of being, innovative leaders. And Lori, what does that look like in real life? Like, what does that look like when you're navigating? I love our board, love our superintendent. I love our organization. But there are some of the times when you have to kind of step back and go, all right, Shernette, if you do that, you know very well that's not going to go over well. Right? So you have to learn how to, number one, communicate with folks, and it needs to be a two-way communication, because there are things that you think about that you didn't have all the information, you didn't have all the details, and you need people you can bounce those things off. So navigating the organization is what I hear you asking, Lori. Can sometimes be very difficult, especially in a large district like Broward County Schools. But I have found that throughout the years, I have been quite successful at doing so, mainly because of the relationships I have built, mainly because of my collaborative approach that I take.
I love that.
Oh my goodness, it is so key. And it's not just internal collaboration, but it's also external. I'm in innovative programs, and I hope they don't mind me calling their names. I'm constantly calling Jim Payne and CTAs. I'm constantly, I'm working with you. I'm constantly asking questions and pulling in people from different departments that I know are relevant to the work that I do, because what we want to avoid is working in isolation. And when you find a lot of over the time you work, a lot of what you're doing, there's some other people doing the same things. There's no point in duplicating work. There's no point in, wasting the time when you could take part A, I take part B, I take part C. We will get to the end game so much quicker, in my opinion. So I think there are definitely some useful strategies to navigating the organization, but I think it is definitely important to keep your brave hat on. Keep it on. You may not all be able to execute everything that you can do, but find the bite sizes,
Right.
Chunk it out.
Be selective. Right.
Be selective.
Absolutely. I love it. I mean, gosh, I've got a page and a half of ingredients here. And I'm just going to read off a couple, because then I'm going to ask you, what is your main ingredient? But love some of this, communication, two-way, making sure you're open as well as communicating, finding your destiny and purpose, making sure that you have someone who supports you, building that fan base that you talked about, having those people to surround you. And those people have to be able to be honest with us when they don't agree, or when they think, we're getting too big for our britches or whatever.
Absolutely.
Looking for the opportunities, always being open to those opportunities, determination. And by the way, some of these things you didn't actually come out and say the ingredient, but you can hear it in the story. And so I hope you don't mind that I pulled that out. Determination, gratitude. You mentioned that several times. Being grateful for opportunities, being grateful for people, courage, and being agile and flexible and open. Love that. Dreaming big. I just absolutely love it. And I think that is the message to our students. That confidence and knowing that, there's nothing you can't do if you put your mind to it. And then, of course, paying that forward and teaching our young people about that. You talk a lot about people and leading people, knowing your people, building that team, and knowing that every one of them can be different, and how we approach and how we deal with them will be different, and how we encourage them and coach them is different. I love the collaboration. And I said in my introduction that was what immediately, that and your confidence were the two things that struck me. I often say, from working in this community for the last 28, 29 years, It often I find that we are competing with each other rather than collaborating with each other.
Absolutely shouldn't be.
Right.
Correct.
Because we all have strengths that we can bring to the table and our core
Agreed.
competencies. And you and I saw that immediately. And so I love that. And then, of course, that's about relationships and building those relationships. Patience, you mentioned, and of course, pressing on, right? When you're facing challenges and never giving up. And so all of those things, amazing ingredients to your recipe. And when we're back at JA in the kitchen there, today you're in my kitchen, we have a board that we actually put all that on. And I think it's interesting because our guests say, wow, I never wrote all that down to see what my ingredients were.
You're amazing, Lori.
They are pretty amazing. Your ingredients and your recipe is pretty amazing. And I'm attracted to people who have amazing recipes.
No,
but
I meant you're amazing for pulling that out.
Oh, well, thank you. I love doing that. I love kind of pulling out the little seeds. But most important, so I love to cook. I'm Italian and Spanish. And so I always say there's one main ingredient always, right, in a recipe. What is Dr. Grant's recipe? What is your main ingredient to your recipe for success?
So, Lori, I think one of the things that you didn't pull out is the word preparation. I don't care what you're cooking. If you don't go to Publix and pick the things up, you will never be able to do a thing in that kitchen.
That's
right?
true. And if you don't marinate that meat, it may not look as good.
You do not buy the sauce, you will not be able to cook that steak, right? So I along with, it's very difficult to pick out one of all of what you just mentioned because it's just important that you combine those. But I have a saying that I use often, and it is preparation precedes your purpose and your opportunity. And I think it's ideal because there are things that, I do in terms of preparing myself. I remember when I became an assistant principal, I was not thinking about leadership. I was doing a degree. I was just going to school. It was a thing to do. I'm from a family that believes in education. And I already had a bachelor's in biology. I didn't want to get another master's in biology. I said, I'm going to do a master's in ed leadership. And the third year when I was doing my internship in the magnet office at Blanchely High School is when that magnet coordinator became assistant principal. And because I was in the right place at the right time, I literally and I was prepared because I had the training and all of that. So you have to prepare. You have to think about the things that you could do. And you may not know where you're going. I tell this story all the time. My story is I have no clue what tomorrow brings. People ask me all the time, what's your aspiration? What's your ambition? I say I have none because I live in the moment and I do a great job where I am and I focus on my current moment. And that's another thing that we miss. We're so busy worried about the next step that we neglect the responsibilities of the current. So preparing, just you do, and you load up your refrigerator with all the ingredients you need, and you it's lifelong learning. If you think about it, it's lifelong learning, right? And whenever that opportunity comes, you just open up the refrigerator. I do have the qualifications for that. I do have, I tell my students that you do not have to decide today what you want to be in 5 years, what degree you don't have to decide, but go to college. Go do it. Do what you have to do. Get the education because you want to be in control of your own destiny so that when the opportunity comes, no one will be able to say no because you do not have the practical qualifications for whatever it is, right? So in addition to everything you just mentioned, Lori, I think it's important, and it's probably a good way to just wrap the whole thing up in terms of you've got to prepare. Preparation.
Yeah. And I think that's why I love what we do at Junior Achievement and why I love working, with all of you, because that is exactly it. Look, today, if you didn't prepare and develop the skill sets, right, that can transfer from one industry or one career to another, you may be in a bad, a very difficult situation today. And so being prepared means developing all those skills, right? And so that for no matter what opportunity comes or what challenge comes, you will be ready to face it. And so I love that. And it is an amazing way to end this We could go on for 2 hours, and that's why you and I, when we get on the phone and we get to lunch, we go on for hours and hours.
2 hours.
But I love it. And I know that together we'll continue to do great things, both you and I as leaders, also as our organizations, representing our organizations. And I just want to say thank you for your partnership. I'm so grateful that our paths have crossed and that we've gotten to know each other. And so thank you for being a friend. Thank you for being an amazing leader. Thank you for being an amazing author. Go buy the book. It's on Amazon, so you can find it there. And I look forward to watching all the things that I know you're going to continue to achieve.
So, Lori, I would be remiss. Thank you. Thank you so much, not only for this opportunity to just share with you in this forum, but for being open, like you said, to the collaboration and the crazy ideas that we had 2 years ago when I met you, a year and a half ago when I met you. The crazy ideas, because again, brave leadership, stepping out of the box and trying something new. And I'm forever grateful for all the opportunities that JA brings to not just the students that I work directly with, but all of Broward County students. And I think if people just stepped into your building for a minute, they would just be amazed. My daughter the other day, by the way, shared with me that she doesn't know how she's going to, number one, handle marriage and finances, because she did not get to go to
Finance Park.
Eighth grade. And it took me about a few minutes to go, what are you talking about? Well, when you're going, the teacher prepares you with, you got to do a budget. You have to think about whether you're married or single. You have kids. First of all, I felt bad as a parent. Obviously, I'm not doing a good job with my own, but the work you do is valuable, Lori. You and your team are amazing. The work you do is
Thank
important.
you.
And I look forward to really continuing to work with JA and bringing
Absolutely. And having some fun with it. So thank you again. Thank you to everyone who's watching. I know we went a little bit longer this morning, but it was well worth it. And I hope that you enjoy the show. And I look forward to seeing everyone on the next episode of JA's Recipe for Success. Let's get cooking.
Take care, Lori.
Thank you.